Okay, so the issue of the borders was completely misunderstood. The EFF categorizes the open border policy in two very specific ways. Firstly, it tells us fundamentally you're not going to solve those problems. In the next 5 years, even if Gaten McKenzie becomes president, we're not going to solve immigration because we're not solving the root cause. Coalitions are going to be frightening. Because you know what the options are. There's either ANC DA, there's ANC EFF MK,
Yeah.
ANC MK, ANC EFF, what. And the policies of the DA, I'm sorry to mention it, are going to be so detrimental for this country that the EFF is going to come into power in 2029. Helen and their cronies have decided to go and speak with Ramaphosa. So it's what's going to happen. And we just need to be prepared for that. Unions are going to lose their ability to protest. The poorest of the poorest is going to get poorer. And, I'm going to be fine because, I'm white. But everyone else, I feel really bad. So maybe go and practice Sarafina or something. Shame. Yeah.
I'm here with
Ewan Dawkins.
what were your thoughts on the results from the elections?
I think MK should have been more expected than they were. So on campus, at the beginning of the year, MK started a WhatsApp group with about 5 members. And just before the election, it had reached a couple hundred members. And that was like astronomical, hundreds of times of growth for MK. EFF faces issues. And that's issues with funding. The EFF only got 6 million rand in funding compared to the 235 million the DA got. But maybe the EFF also faces issues of sticking too genuinely to their policy on issues of foreigners and foreign affairs and not correctly enough explaining those issues. So I'm sure they lost votes there as well.
What are your thoughts on the foreign policies? And when you say explaining further, could you just give the viewers the explanation that you feel like the EFF didn't disclose efficiently?
Oh, okay. So the issue of the borders was completely misunderstood. The EFF categorizes the open border policy in two very specific ways. Firstly, it tells us right now the borders are open. We have an open border policy. People come in and out of our borders freely. They don't really have any inability to come in and out of our borders. Our borders don't exist. First, our borders are longer than the border with Mexico. We have a lot less funding than the US does. So there's an understanding that our borders are almost impossible to actually prevent immigration through. But secondly, they recognize the fact that people are coming illegally because they can't get papers legally. So they wanted to implement a system where getting visas were a lot more easy, creating a sort of African passport which functions similar to the European ID system, where instead of going and paying smugglers to throw you across the border, a much easier way to do it would be doing it legally through getting a synchronized passport, synchronized ID that allows you to go between the borders a lot more easier, and therefore we'll be able to keep track of immigrants who come into the country. So they wanted to implement a system where your fingerprints were there, your DNA was there. So immigrants who want to come into the country come in easily, and then they're tracked. Because the alternative to that is that immigrants come into the country anyway and they're not tracked. So the EFF's implementation was very misunderstood, and it was misunderstood purposefully by people who want to perpetuate a xenophobic narrative to gain votes and keep the wealthy in power. If you're sitting with a worker and a rich person, and the rich person has 10 cookies and the worker has 1, the rich person will tell the worker, hey, be careful, the immigrant's going to come and steal your 1 biscuit. So on top of that, the EFF recognizes we have to understand firstly why immigrants are coming in the first place. They're not coming for no reason. They're coming because the countries that they're fleeing from are in turmoil. So what the EFF recognizes is that you need to put in solutions to correct the issues within those countries. As the most powerful country on the African continent, we have an ability and a duty to do that if we actually want to stop immigration. So what that looks like is putting measures on economic sanctions on ZANU-PF to ensure that they have democratic elections and therefore benefiting Zimbabwe, preventing illegal immigration into South Africa in the first place, instead of just putting up walls that don't work in the first place.
Yeah, I guess a lot of the South Africans' perspective is clean your room first. like put your oxygen mask on first, because I guess especially during elections, a lot of people are pushing the narrative that we're going to save South Africa, and there's a bit of like a disconnect with the EFF because it feels like, yeah, we're going to save Africa, and then
you forget about
like
South
what about
Africa?
us?
Yeah.
Like you can't exactly.
Yeah.
So but I hear you.
No, it's justifiable because there's, like in Limpopo, there's issues where white farmers will employ foreign workers so that they don't have to pay them minimum wage. And that's a legitimate issue. But fundamentally, you're not going to solve those problems. In the next 5 years, even if Gates and McKenzie becomes president, we're not going to solve immigration because we're not solving the root cause.
Yeah.
So it's true that the EFF might have been out of touch, but it's not going to solve it. Also, I had no faith in the DA because Steenhuisen is a wet blanket and he lacks, I don't know, he lacks soul, he lacks personality. Like, I didn't think he was going to, even get 20%, but he did. And I think that's a testament to the Swat Khafar narrative that they've been peddling.
What is that?
They say there's a doomsday coalition. There's Swat Khafar was the term they used in apartheid, which was black peril, the danger of black people taking over.
Okay.
So the DA said the same thing. ANC and EFF is Swat Khafar, ANC and MK is Swat Khafar. Once black people take over, the country is going down. So I think they just perpetuated the same narrative now where they say there's going to be a doomsday coalition of the EFF and MK and ANC. So I suppose that's why they got the votes they did.
How do you think the coalitions are going to go? What are your thoughts on that in general? Yeah.
I think the coalitions are a terrifying prospect for the country, and not because the ANC shouldn't be in power. Should be in power. I don't think the ANC should be in power. We can agree. But coalitions are going to be frightening. Because you know what the options are. There's either ANC DA, there's ANC EFF MK, ANC MK, ANC EFF. What.
But it's interesting because there's like MK saying they want Ramaphosa.
They want Ramaphosa out.
EFF is like he doesn't want to be deputy. Julius is saying he doesn't want to be deputy president or president, but he wants who as minister of finance.
As minister of finance.
So it would be very intriguing.
I think that they're going to go into coalition with the DA because Ramaphosa is what Ramaphosa's always been, which is a sellout. And they're going to continue with the same policies that they've been continuing with since Ramaphosa's come into power, which is essentially the same policies as the DA. And the policies of the DA, I'm sorry to mention it, are going to be so detrimental for this country that the EFF is going to come into power in 2029. Because the way that the right wing is going to destroy the economy of this country and put the already marginalized people in South Africa into worse poverty is going to create a throwback where people are going to become radicalized. Because in a country with the highest inequality rates in the world, their plan is not to decrease it, their plan is to increase it. So either we're going to have the EFF come into power or we're going to have an unled revolution. And the reason I say that is because the DA's economic policy and what their plan is with the ANC is absolutely terrifying.
Could you just expand on that?
So they want to institute a measure which is basically privatize everything, privatize all of our services. And we know from historical examples that doesn't work. So we know Russia in the 1990s decided to privatize everything after the fall of communism.
Yeah.
And the reason it doesn't work is that there's only a handful of people in a country who have enough wealth to be able to buy up the government privatized industries. Because there's not going to be 20 new ESCOMs. There's going to be one ESCOM, but it's going to be owned by a billionaire.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is that you create a monopoly. So competition doesn't exist within this sort of capitalist system because you're going to have one person that's a rich guy in charge of ESCOM, one person that's a rich guy in charge of our water. And instead of these entities now being accountable to the people as their government agencies, they're going to be accountable to profit holders. So these companies are going to run services for nothing else but profit.
Yeah.
Raising the prices on everything like we saw in the UK when they privatized their transport industry. It got worse and prices went up. And what we're going to see in South Africa is that when people already can't afford electricity, no one's going to be able to afford electricity that isn't maybe in the top 20%. And what's going to happen from that is that a lot of our industries are going to collapse because all of our important industries in this country are going to become for profit.
So it's doomsday till 2029. Is that what you're saying?
I think they're going to make such terrible, because the DA's policy isn't to implement capitalism with South African characteristics. They just want to implement capitalism. They have no recollection or ability to transport or transplant those ideologies into the South African context. They're just doing it verbatim. They're just throwing it on and hoping it works, even though we know it doesn't work. They want to abolish and throw back minimum wage to increase employment. The problem with that is that decreasing minimum wage doesn't make people want to employ more people, because the demands for the products aren't increased.
Yeah.
So let's say you work at a company, you produce Coke. When the DA goes and says, okay, you can pay your workers less, there's suddenly not more people wanting Coke. There's just workers who are going to end up being paid less.
Yeah.
And what this instead does is that these workers, who are also the consumers in the society, are going to have less money to go and buy the same products that these companies are selling. So it's going to create a cycle where people have less and less income to actually buy the products in that country. So we're going to have possibly good economic growth, good GDP growth for maybe the first 2 years of the coalition, because the markets are going to respond nicely. But once, like capitalism always does, hits a crisis, they're not going to be able to survive. And with the state of how South Africa is, with the amount of poverty that South Africa has, we're going to see President Malema in 2029. So it's going to be, I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's a dangerous possibility.
Why are you so adamant that the coalition is going to go with the DA, not the EFF or the MK?
Oh, because MK just doesn't want to work unless Ramaphosa's not there, and Ramaphosa's
It's not going anywhere.
He's not going anywhere. So it's not going to be MK. The EFF doesn't have enough votes to go into a coalition with the ANC. Even if they go with IFP, I think Ramaphosa is too scared of their radical policies and how the rand's going to drop and how private business is going to frame our country. And Ramaphosa, being an agent of white monopoly capital, isn't going to want to scare off his funders.
Yeah.
So I don't think he's going to go with the EFF. So, already Helen and their cronies have decided to go and speak with Ramaphosa. So it's what's going to happen. And we just need to be prepared for that. Unions are going to lose their ability to protest. The poorest of the poorest is going to get poorer. And, I'm going to be fine because, I'm white. But everyone else, I feel really bad. So maybe go and practice Sarafina or something. Shame. Yeah. But it's going to be a difficult time.
Interesting. What do you think happened with the voting? I thought everyone was on board and we're all, because I think obviously because we had Wits and then
maybe there's an echo chamber.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then reality,
because it fits the EFF one nicely. And then the rest of the country.
And my algorithm was saying
yes, EFF. Everyone's social media was EFF. I don't know. I think the foreign issue hit us, or hit the EFF, should I say?
Probably didn't have enough funding also to do ground level work, because it seems like
a lot of places they haven't gone.
Yeah.
Like Eastern Cape, a lot of people are hating on Eastern Cape because they still voted ANC. But the ANC is the only people going into rural areas of Eastern Cape. There's an interesting thing. The poorest municipality in the country, the place in South Africa with the lowest HDI is a municipality in the Eastern Cape, and for the first time they voted out the ANC and they put in the EFF. So there's tiny examples of change coming along. But shame. The EFF has 1 million members. I'm a little surprised that each member couldn't get a friend to also vote for the EFF to get them to 2 million votes. But
it's so intriguing, and it's the worst provinces are voting for
ANC.
It's I'm so confused.
Oh, I just don't think people are. I don't know. Social media is blinding. If you don't have a phone and you live in Limpopo to see what's happening on social media, you're not going to be part of that echo chamber anyway.
There's in their perspective, probably ANC is what we know better. The devil we know that.
Then the devil we don't, because things are okay now.
It's going to be apartheid.
And
EFF, the foreigners.
The foreigners are going to come
everyone else we don't really know them. So it's like
there was too many parties anyway. So
like the Action SA, Rise Mzansi.
Action SA was interesting.
Xhosa.
Helen was very smart with Action SA because they started the Moonshot Coalition or the Bulinyanga, to shoot the traditional healers. And they were very smart with that because everyone that wanted to vote Action SA said, who cares? They're going to be in coalition with the DA anyway. So Action SA got 1% when they were projected to get like 5%. So Helen was very smart with that coalition. They destroyed the opposition entirely. And now they've maintained their 20% average. So it's fine. They were smart. Musi, I feel terrible. Shame. I saw him posting yesterday that he wants to go and thank all of his supporters, and he could probably just do it in person at this point because,
it was so bad because
he got 2 seats.
the DA was like, Musi left and we got more black votes.
And we got more black votes. Sometimes the best policy for the DA is just to keep quiet.
I'm like, what? Why would you? Even if it's true, why would
Even
you
if
say
it's true,
that?
don't say that because. They're tone deaf. I thought the flag thing would have helped, but it didn't.
Yeah, that was surprising. They were almost leading Gauteng, eh?
So we're going to go into the next 5 years of coalitions, and it's going to be. I don't know. Hopefully we've learned since 2021 how coalitions work. Hopefully we don't make the same mistakes. But we need to choose our partners wisely.
But thank you so much for being on my video.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was cool.